The grand hall of the Sterling Plaza Hotel sparkled under the chandeliers, filled with the city's wealthiest and most influential, all gathered for the annual charity gala and benefit concert. No one paid attention to Jordan Hayes as he quietly pushed his cleaning cart along the marble floors. No one, except for Clara Whitman. At 30, Clara was used to commanding rooms, but tonight she wasn't prepared for what would happen. A champagne glass slipped from her hand, spilling across her expensive crimson gown, and in a split second, her sharp laughter cut through the room. "You incompetent fool," she snapped, pointing at the black janitor who had simply bent to retrieve a fallen glass. The crowd gasped, expecting shame and retreat, but Jordan Hayes lifted his head, calm and resolute, and said the words that would change everything. "I accept. I'll play the piano." The Sterling Plaza Hotel glittered under the New York skyline, its marble floors reflecting the golden chandeliers above. Tonight was the city's annual charity gala and benefit concert, an event that drew the elite in tailored tuxedos and diamond-studded gowns. It was a night designed for opulence, social posturing, and silent competition over who could appear more generous than the next. No one noticed Jordan Hayes as he quietly maneuvered his cleaning cart through the side quarters. At 30 years old, he had learned that the world inside these halls belonged to the wealthy, and people like him, black, modest, and overlooked, were meant to remain unseen. 5 years at Sterling Plaza had taught him that invisibility was the safest shield. Jordan adjusted the collar of his Navy uniform and glanced around, ensuring he wouldn't bump into anyone. He picked up scattered champagne flutes and polished silver trays, moving silently through the room. This was his element, strangely comforting amidst the chaos, until a ripple of laughter caught his attention. Clara Whitman had entered the grand hall like a queen stepping onto her throne. At 30, she already controlled an empire of hotels, construction firms, and investments scattered across the country. Her crimson dress hugged every curve, her dark hair coiled into a perfect chignon. Diamonds sparkling at her neck and wrists, each worth more than most of the staff's annual salary. Tonight, she was the main sponsor of the gala, present not out of empathy but duty. Her laughter rang artificially over the room, sharp and commanding. "Darling, such a beautiful night, isn't it?" she said to a group of high-powered executives, flashing a rehearsed smile. "Let's ensure we all contribute generously tonight, for the less fortunate, of course." Jordan had heard this kind of talk before. Charity as a performance, generosity as a display for social validation. He rolled his eyes internally and bent to pick up a fallen glass. Then it happened. Clara, gesturing broadly in conversation, stepped backward without looking. Her champagne glass tilted, spilling golden liquid across her silk dress, leaving a splatter that gleamed like tears on the crimson fabric. "What the hell?" she shouted, her face twisting into rage. "You incompetent fool! Look what you've done!" Hundreds of eyes turned, dozens of cameras discreetly raised to capture the spectacle. Jordan's heart pounded. I'm so sorry, ma'am. It was an accident. I didn't mean..." His voice was cut off as Clara's words rose an octave, dripping with contempt. "Do you know how much this dress costs? How dare you?" The room seemed to tighten around him, and Jordan felt himself shrinking under the collective gaze of judgment and privilege. "Can I pay for the cleaning?" he asked quietly, knowing even the thought of buying the dress was absurd. Clara laughed, but it was not the kind of laughter that suggested humor. It was cruel, surgical, meant to humiliate. "Pay with what money, dear? Your cleaning wages?" The guests snickered, some recording the moment, some whispering approvingly to one another. Jordan's face burned with a shame he had felt many times before. "He's invisible," Clara continued theatrically. "Some people are born to clean up messes, not to exist in the world of the powerful." Jordan straightened his back, swallowing down the anger and humiliation that surged like fire. "Please," he murmured, almost inaudible. Clara leaned closer, eyes glittering, a cruel smile spreading. "You want me to pretend this never happened? That people like you have the same value as people like us?" Her gaze flicked to the grand piano at the end of the hall. Then a thought struck her, wicked and impulsive. "You know what? If you can play that piano better than a professional, I'll marry you." The room erupted into laughter. Someone shouted, "He'll never do it!" Jordan turned slowly to the piano, then back to Clara. a storm of humiliation, anger, and a distant nostalgia flickering in his chest. The crowd's laughter swelled. "People like you can't touch music, culture, refinement," Clara said, eyes scanning those around her for approval. Jordan felt the sting, but something inside him had already shifted. For years, he had been the perfect employee, efficient, invisible, unobtrusive. But tonight, he would no longer hide. "I accept," he said, his voice quiet yet firm. The room paused, stunned. Clara blinked. "What did you say?" she demanded. "I accept," Jordan repeated, meeting her eyes for the first time that night. A ripple of disbelief passed through the room. The guests leaned forward, some whispering, some still laughing, some raising phones to capture what they assumed would be an embarrassing performance. Jordan's hands were sweaty, his mind racing through memories he had buried for nearly a decade. Evenings at the Manhattan Conservatory of Music, the voice of his old instructor whispering, "Feel the music, Jordan. Don't just touch the keys." His fingers hovered over the polished Steinway D, and he let his first note ring out. It was tentative, almost fragile, but it was his. "Play something," Clara shouted mockingly, thinking to humiliate him further. Jordan's lips pressed into a thin line. His eyes closed briefly, blocking out the gala, the laughter, the disdain. Only the music remained. The first melody was simple, recognizable, but his touch added nuance, emotion, and an authenticity no one had anticipated. The room fell silent. Whispers ceased. Even the servers paused mid-step. Clara felt a cold knot in her stomach. This was not supposed to happen. Jordan moved seamlessly from a simple tune to a more complex sonata. Each phrase revealed precision, passion, and the depth of a talent refined through years of disciplined training and sacrifice. The audience began to shift, some whispering in awe. "Who is this man?" someone murmured. "A cleaner, and he can play like this?" Another shook their head in disbelief. The music was no longer an instrument of humiliation. It became a revelation of truth, talent, and resilience. For Jordan, this was more than performance. It was reclaiming identity, asserting dignity, and challenging the prejudices that had shadowed his life. With each note, he dismantled the invisible barriers, the assumptions based on his skin color, his position, his role. Clara's smile faded. She gripped her champagne glass, realizing that the joke had spiraled out of her control. The first ovation began hesitantly, then swelled into a genuine standing applause. Phones captured the moment not to ridicule, but to honor. Jordan's eyes finally lifted, meeting Clara's, and for the first time that evening, she saw him. Not as an invisible cleaner, not as an object of mockery, but as a human being of profound talent and worth. Mrs. Eleanor Fields, the longtime house manager, watched with tears in her eyes, proud and protective, knowing she had witnessed a reckoning decades in the making. Jordan paused, the last note resonating like a heartbeat, the audience frozen between disbelief and awe. Clara's face was pale, her arrogance stripped away, replaced by shock, a dawning respect, and the first stirrings of humility. For the first time, the elite witnessed the cost of prejudice, the injustice of dismissal, and the triumph of true talent. Can a single moment of courage or skill change the way people perceive someone forever? The room fell into a hushed awe, the kind that made the usual chatter of the elite vanish into nothingness. Jordan Hayes' fingers danced across the Steinway keys, each note crisp, deliberate, and saturated with an unspoken story. This wasn't simply a display of talent. It was a reclamation of years stolen, of dreams deferred, and of dignity denied. The guests who had laughed moments ago now leaned forward, mouths agape, cameras raised, capturing every detail not for mockery, but for astonishment. Clara Whitman's hand trembled against the stem of her champagne glass. She had imagined humiliation. She had anticipated a clumsy, nervous attempt. But this was artistry. Jordan had elevated the music into something transcendent, threading technical mastery with a vulnerability that drew every ear, every eye into his story. His performance was a silent rebuke to her arrogance, a challenge to the assumptions she and her peers had long made about who belonged in these halls. For Jordan, each note was a declaration. He had been invisible for too long, dismissed because of the color of his skin, his station, his supposed place. Every sharp chord was a flash of anger, every soft trill a sigh for the years of sacrifice his parents had made for him to study music, only for tragedy and debt to force him into work that barely acknowledged his worth. As the melody shifted into a sonata of remarkable complexity, whispers began circulating. Could it be? Someone murmured. A few heads turned toward Mrs. Eleanor Grant, the house manager, who nodded subtly. She had known the truth all along. Jordan was a prodigy, a musician trained at the Manhattan Conservatory of Music, whose potential had been eclipsed by life's cruel turns. The laughter had long died. In its place grew a charged silence, the kind that makes a room collectively hold its breath. Clara's face drained of color, her polished confidence fracturing as she realized the depth of her misjudgment. Jordan's eyes never left the piano, yet he felt every gaze in the room weighing upon him. Each note told the story, a black man navigating a world of privilege, battling the unseen barriers of racial and class bias, asserting his right to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. As the piece intensified, Jordan added subtle improvisations, harmonies that dazzled with sophistication. The audience began to murmur, astonished that someone they had assumed would fail could produce something so breathtaking. The interns with phones, initially poised to capture a humiliating spectacle, now recorded a masterclass. "He's incredible," whispered one woman to her friend, her eyes wide. "How has no one known this?" Another shook his head in disbelief. "A janitor? And he plays like that?" The notion of invisibility shattered, replaced by admiration and, for some, an uncomfortable awareness of their own assumptions. Clara tried to recover, attempting to assert control over the narrative, but the spell had shifted. This was no longer about her challenge, no longer about her amusement at his expense. Jordan was commanding the room, his talent undeniable, his composure unwavering. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, as if realizing they had underestimated him based on skin color and social standing. The sting of prejudice became palpable, and the weight of their laughter from moments before now pressed heavily against their conscience. The final notes came in a cascade, a delicate yet powerful ending that resonated like a heartbeat across the marble floor. Jordan leaned back slightly, letting the echo settle. The room erupted, not in ridicule, but in genuine applause. Standing ovations multiplied, spreading from the front rows to the back, the sound of recognition filling every corner. Clara's eyes, once sparkling with mockery, now reflected disbelief, awe, and an unfamiliar unease. Jordan had not only defended his dignity, he had forced the room to confront the arbitrary boundaries of race, wealth, and social hierarchy. Mrs. Grant's eyes glistened as she approached quietly, placing a steadying hand on Jordan's shoulder. "You reminded them, Ethan. Reminded them all," she murmured. Jordan exhaled slowly, the adrenaline mingling with relief and residual tension. He had faced humiliation, yet emerged more commanding, more seen than ever before. He glanced at Clara, who now avoided his gaze, the weight of her words and her public mockery pressing down on her like never before. A hush fell once more as Clara, her voice shaky but trying to reclaim authority, spoke. That was remarkable." Her tone was not only admiration, but also an attempt to regain the narrative she had lost. She had intended to humiliate, to assert her superiority, yet here she was, confronted by the undeniable proof of her misjudgment. She swallowed hard, the fine veneer of control slipping. For the first time, Clara felt the sting of accountability, the sharp realization that talent and value cannot be judged by appearances or station. Jordan finally met her gaze, a calm intensity in his eyes. "It's not about proving something to anyone," he said, voice low but firm, resonating with dignity. "It's about being seen for who you are. No matter the color of your skin, no matter your title, everyone deserves respect." The room seemed to still, absorbing the weight of his words. Clara's lips parted slightly, struggling to form a response that would reconcile her public persona with the raw reality she had just witnessed. She could no longer hide behind wealth or image. An executive cleared his throat from the edge of the room. "Madeline, Clara, you've learned a lesson tonight," he said, almost teasing, almost serious. Clara's shoulders tensed, her reputation teetering precariously as whispers spread through the hall. Social media feeds had already exploded with video clips, hashtags of admiration, and debates about privilege and bias. Clara's laughter from earlier had long vanished. The crowd's focus had shifted entirely onto Jordan, whose performance had become a symbol of justice and unrecognized talent. Jordan remained composed, feeling the eyes of hundreds on him, yet his thoughts drifted to the years of sacrifice and silenced potential. This moment was not about victory over Clara, not about humiliation, but about reclaiming his voice, his skill, and the acknowledgement long denied. Each clap, each cheer reinforced what he had known all along. His value was inherent, not assigned by status, skin color, or perception. As the applause gradually subsided, Jordan allowed himself a small, private smile. Clara approached cautiously, her demeanor softer, her eyes reflecting a mixture of embarrassment, respect, and curiosity. I didn't expect, she began. Jordan inclined his head slightly, letting her finish. There was no need for confrontation, no need for mockery. Tonight she had witnessed the truth, and that was more powerful than any insult or challenge. The room buzzed with conversation again, but the narrative had shifted entirely. Jordan Hayes was no longer invisible. His skill, his resilience, and his humanity had left an indelible mark on the audience, forcing a room of privilege to reconsider their assumptions, their biases, and the weight of their words. Clara Whitman, humbled and introspective, walked beside him silently, both of them acutely aware that this night had changed everything, not just for them, but for everyone watching. The Sterling Plaza Hall had quieted after the standing ovation, but the energy in the room was electric. Every guest, from seasoned investors to socialites, felt the shift. Jordan Hayes, still seated at the piano, allowed himself a brief moment to breathe. He had reclaimed his dignity, asserted his talent, and reminded a room full of privilege that no one's worth should ever be underestimated. Clara Whitman stood nearby, her face pale, her expression a mixture of awe and humility. For the first time that evening, she felt the weight of her arrogance and the consequences of underestimating someone solely based on appearance or social status. Mrs. Eleanor Grant approaches Jordan quietly, her voice gentle but firm. "You've given them all a lesson tonight, Ethan," she said, using the name Jordan had preferred. "But now it's time to think about yourself. What do you want to do next?" Jordan closed his eyes, letting the question sink. His parents had worked tirelessly to support his musical education, only for life to pull him into a world where his brilliance had been unseen, disregarded. But tonight had been different. Tonight, the truth had been heard. He was no longer invisible. Clara hesitated, then spoke softly. "Ethan, I owe you more than I can explain. You've shown me the power of talent, integrity, and courage. I don't want this night to define us by a mistake or by arrogance. I want it to be a new beginning." Jordan opened his eyes and met hers. For the first time, he saw a woman who had been humanized by witnessing truth, someone willing to confront her own biases and grow. "Then let's do something meaningful," he said. "Let's use this moment to change more than just perceptions. Let's make music accessible. Let's create opportunities for young people who might otherwise be overlooked, just as I was." Clara nodded, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. "I want to help. I want to sponsor your work, to support programs for aspiring musicians, and to learn to see people for who they truly are, not for what society tells me to expect." Jordan felt a warmth spread through him. This was the outcome he had hoped for, not revenge, not validation, but transformation. Together, they could make a difference. The gala attendees, still buzzing from the performance, slowly gathered closer. The cameras no longer captured ridicule, but fascination and inspiration. Even Tyler, the intern who had filmed the first moments intending to mock Jordan, now watched with wide eyes, realizing he had witnessed something extraordinary. Jordan stood, turning to the room. "Tonight isn't about me alone," he said. "It's about what happens when we allow talent, dedication, and humanity to shine, regardless of background, color, or status." Applause erupted, genuine and heartfelt this time, echoing through the hall like a chorus of recognition and hope. Over the following weeks, Jordan began rebuilding his musical career with Clara's support. Together, they launched the Hayes Music Initiative, providing scholarships, instruments, and mentorship programs for young musicians from underrepresented communities. Clara learned alongside him, participating in workshops, speaking at schools, and discovering the fulfillment that comes from lifting others up rather than flaunting wealth. Her previous arrogance gradually melted into empathy and awareness, reshaping her worldview. The change was profound, not just for Clara, but for the many lives they touched. Meanwhile, Jordan's story spread across social media, reaching millions. Audiences were captivated not only by his piano mastery, but by the narrative of resilience and dignity. Viewers who had never considered the impact of systemic bias and social invisibility began engaging with the issue more deeply. The performance at the Sterling Plaza became emblematic. A single act of courage, talent, and integrity could challenge prejudice, spark conversation, and inspire change. Jordan received letters from aspiring musicians of all ages, thanking him for showing that their dreams mattered, that society's labels could be overcome. Months later, another gala was held, not a benefit for image, but a celebration of community and talent. Jordan played the opening piece, his music resonating across the packed hall, each note carrying a story of struggle, perseverance, and triumph. Clara stood nearby, no longer the aloof heiress, but a partner in purpose. Their collaboration symbolized the bridge between privilege and opportunity, between misunderstanding and understanding. Guests were moved to tears, not by wealth, but by authenticity and the transformative power of respect and recognition. As the final chords lingered, Jordan turned to Clara and smiled. "We've done something good here," he said quietly. "More than I could have imagined." Clara's eyes shone. "And I've learned more than I could have imagined. You've taught me humility, courage, and the importance of seeing people as they are, not as I expect them to be." They shared a brief moment of silent acknowledgement, a mutual respect forged through honesty, courage, and the magic of music. In the months that followed, Jordan's career flourished. He performed in venues that once seemed unattainable, taught masterclasses, and became a symbol of how talent and integrity could break through barriers. Clara continued to champion initiatives that promoted equity, fairness, and opportunity. The city began to take notice, media outlets sharing their story as a testament to the transformative power of empathy, second chance, and human dignity. Jordan's rise was never about fame or wealth. It was about justice, recognition, and inspiring others to see beyond appearances. The most striking transformation, however, was in the hearts of those who had underestimated him. Guests who had laughed at the gala now told stories of how that night changed their perspectives on privilege, race, and humility. Jordan's victory was both personal and societal, a reminder that no one should be dismissed for the circumstances of birth, the color of their skin, or their station in life. Clara's growth proved that even those born into privilege could learn, change, and contribute meaningfully to a fairer, more compassionate society. Together, they had rewritten the rules of engagement, one note, one gesture, one lesson at a time. By the end of the year, the Sterling Plaza Gala had become a legend. It was no longer remembered for the opulence or the champagne, but for Jordan Hayes, the Black pianist who refused invisibility, who demanded respect, and whose music compelled even the most arrogant to confront their biases. And Clara Whitman, transformed from a figure of vanity into a beacon of empathy, remained a reminder that human potential is recognized not through wealth or status, but through courage, talent, and character. What would you do if you were in Jordan's position, facing humiliation in front of a room full of elites? How do you think this moment challenges the way people perceive race, status, and talent? If this story moved you, comment 111 below to show your support, tell us which country you're watching from, and don't forget to share this video with friends who need to hear it.